Hi, my friends. We are here. I can hear you guys.
Hi, hi.
Hi.
Good night.
Hi, bro. Hi, dear.
Hi.
So we're here for the final day of the book, The Messengers. We finally reached those last chapters. So we have loads of interesting things to talk about today. This book is amazing. We do recommend you guys that are accompanying here with us, that are listening or watching these videos about the study to read the entire book because it's a huge blessing that the good spirits sent to us. Um, Before we start, Nora will bring us a quick prayer, and then we're gonna go through these amazing chapters.
All right, here we go. Dear God, thank you for this evening. Thank you for all the resources. Thank you for our dear brother Chris, for our dear brother Jean. And thank you for me being able to be here. We kindly ask that you enlighten us and those around us, those spirits or those that are able to watch live or on demand. And as we ask for permission, we will begin with the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. And so be it.
Thanks, dear, so much.
Thank you.
So let's get going. We are in chapter 40, which is called Heading to the Countryside. And we have a bunch of nice things to talk about this chapter. After that context, about which we were talking last week in Isabel's house with her children, praying, talking about the gospel, receiving spiritual friends who were actually collaborating when it comes to interpreting the gospel. After all that Nora brought to us, she was the last one talking last week. Andrea Luis tells us that almost all the spirit workers in that context were leaving the house on their way to the assorted tasks. However, just before noon, Aniceto invited Andrea Luis and Vicente, our trio, to accompany him to a workshop in which he explained they could find vital renewal of their strength for their work. As we saw, they spent the whole night in loads of work. And he said that last night had been a series of long, exhausting activities, so they needed some rest. He also said that they would return at dusk. And so Andrea Luis, Vicente, and Aniceto were going to the countryside, and that's what this chapter is about. To reach the countryside, they would use validation, as we've seen before. And then Andrea Luis realized that now, at this point of the book, it was easier for him to validate. He said that that learning excursion, that this whole book, um, with its stop at the Campo da Paz aid station, had done him much good. He had actually improved. He said that his training had actually improved, and he felt strong enough to face vibrations of a lower order. And he also said that his visual abilities were growing as well. This is very nice. So we here at this point of the book, we see Andrea Luis telling us that after all that work, he started to feel better. So we do see here what Saint Francis of Assisi told us: for it's in giving that we receive, because we see him working a lot in Solar, in the those rectification chambers. Now in this book called The Messengers, he worked a lot, and now he's receiving something after giving a lot. Is still in this chapter, because Andrea Luis' vision was able to perceive more things. He tells us that he started to see loads of things that he hadn't seen so far. As an example, he saw clouds of bacteria that humans could attract by their low thoughts. This is very interesting. He also noticed large grayish and completely dark areas that were zones of inferior mental matter. Then Aniceto gave him this lesson, which is beautiful. I have transcribed it. Humans are attacked not only by such clouds of bacteria, which are destructive to physical life, but by perverse forms of the darkness, which threaten their mental balance. As you can see, the watch and pray of the gospel has profound importance in every situation at any time. Only people with positive mentalities in the realm of higher spirituality can overcome the multiple influences of a lower nature. This is very interesting. And then we finish this first chapter of today, chapter 40, and we enter chapter 41, amongst the trees. When they leaned back into the velvety grass, Aniceto, who was leading them, perceiving their thirst for knowledge, he started to explain what was happening, what they were feeling. He said that the emanations in a forest, a denser forest, are very and much harder because that environment is rather impenetrable to the wind. There, the air usually becomes a suffocating element because of the excess of emissions from the lower kingdoms of nature. He goes, he goes further, telling us that likewise in the city, the atmosphere is compact and the air is also suffocating because of the mentally dense emanations of the lower groups of humans. That is why in the country, this chapter, they would have the ideal place to rest. Nature, but not that much of nature that the wind can go through. In the countryside, the relatively balanced peace of nature reigns because there is neither the wildness of the virgin forest nor the suffocation of human fluids that we encounter in the cities. They took a nap and rested for some while. And while still in this chapter, with the first hues of twilight appearing, Aniceto invited them for a quick walk around the vicinity. And then we're gonna start seeing a very interesting situation. Their attention was attracted by a commotion near that road they were on. They went on that direction, following Aniceto, who had already guessed what was going on. They saw a man lying on the ground in a pool of blood next to a small cart pulled by a mule that was showing signs of great agitation. There were two incarnate hastily providing first aid to this wounded man. Andrea Luis saw that there were a lot of spirits, although there were only two incarnates, helping the small group of incarnated people. A spirit told them what had happened. The book brings us that there was like a leader of the spirits. The car driver had been kicked by the mule and they had to rescue him. Another spirit said that he tried to avoid the accident, but the driver did not have any respect for the natural gifts of God. The spirit told that the man was unspeakably cruel to the animals that helped him earn his pay. This is very sad. The spirit explained, this other spirit, that the mule got so tormented by the driver's outbursts of anger that it kicked him in the head. Then Aniceto said that they would help the man as much as they could, but they should not miss the lesson there. Aniceto says this, I transcribed it. Imprudence, that imprudence worker had punished himself. Anger is punished by its consequences. Evil follows evil. If animals, our brothers and sisters in the great home of life, provides us with the worth of their service, we, in return, should give them the worth of education. But people cannot educate if they hate, nor can they build anything useful with fury and brutality. This chapter brings loads of lessons. And to finish this chapter, Andrea Luis um, brings us and another lesson. He says that he began to understand that no one disrespects nature without the painful blow of retribution. So this chapter is very, very meaningful because we've been going through with the pandemic and with this natural disasters that we've been going through here in Brazil. There are happening every day, literally. And this is actually a response. We have attacked, and now we are gaining what we've earned. Do you guys wanna say something before I go further?
There's a nice point. The dense forest. We have lots of legends in forests, like bee wolves. That's lots of people got lost in forests, dense forests, and get mental confusion. Because that if he, uh, if he, Narcissa, when get near, ask permission to get there, because there is a lot of things happening. You need to permission to get there. Just a point.
No, amazing, amazing. And this is a huge reality here in Brazil. We have loads of stories of people getting lost in the forest, happening things, seeing ghosts in the forest. It's crazy
Yeah.
here. Does that happen there in USA?
So I don't know that for us, this animal abuse movement is like, yeah, I feel like every country has its own language. But I do know here there's a lot of these um, no kill animal shelters or sanctuaries trying to educate the community about our pets. Right here we have a lot of people that have cats and dogs, but all sorts of things, right? And trying to raise the awareness. I know, for instance, like if it's Christmas, if you're going to give a puppy, like, this is a lifetime commitment. It's not just for this. Or like Valentine's Day is coming up, um or if it's a birthday, like things like that. But I wanted to share a book that deals with nature. It's El Camino by Shirley Mclean, and a lot of people do this pilgrimage, Santiago de Compostela in Europe, and they say that this whole walk, it's all nature. And at one point, they just, like, her story was so powerful. Like, she just became one. She was just singing all these colors. So nature is like our brother, is our sister. And the consciousness, I think, that we have is to use it for the good. I'm taking this human evolution course, and the professor worked so hard. Like, we can maybe measure a lot of stuff with bacteria because they don't have like our consciousness, right? But what are we doing to take care of that? Like, if God gave us this in part as evolution for us to have this awareness, we should put it to good use. So that's, yeah. And I know you guys in Brazil, there's this series on Netflix, and they talk about different people that had like superpowers that take care of the forest, and they have different things. And the main one was the guy with the forest, and he was like indigenous. It was a beautiful story. I don't know what's the name. I shouldn't bring something up if I don't remember.
I don't. I haven't watched it. Have you, Chris?
No, not yet.
Yes,
I
yes.
don't know what's the
But
name.
I will. I
I
will.
haven't even heard of that, but that's a great,
Yeah.
great advice.
Yeah.
That's great. So let's keep on going. Um, Now we enter chapter 42, which is called The Word in a World Setting. The spirits that were helping the wounded man, asked Aniceto to give them a scripture lesson now that the day was almost over. It is very nice because those spirits that were there in the forest, they could feel that Aniceto was a very high level spirit. That's very nice. And then they brought a copy of the New Testament to Aniceto. When Aniceto found the passage he chose to talk about and started to meditate on it, before he started to speak, André Luis saw that a sublime light began to halo his head. This is very pretty. He also said that at that moment, a herd of cattle approached them, attracted by magnetic energies beyond André Luis' understanding. He said that the birds also settled down in the dense foliage without making a peep. Aniceto read aloud Romans chapter 8, verses 19 to 21. The text is very pretty, and since we don't have time to talk about the Aniceto's interpretation, I'm gonna bring the gospel. I'm using the new version, the NIV translation. I don't know if here in Brazil it's very common to use that translation of the Bible. I don't know there in USA, but it's like much more modern. So verse 18. I consider that our present sufferings are not worth comparing with the glory that will be revealed in us. For the creation waits in eager expectation for the children of God to be revealed. For the creation was subjected to frustration, not by its own choice, but by the will of the one who subjected it in hope that the creation itself will be liberated from its bondage to decay and brought into the freedom and glory of the children of God. Beautiful. And because yes, yes, very beautiful. As I said, we can bring Aniceto's interpretation, but he was talking about that we need as incarnate human beings to have. We need to start understanding what nature actually means when it comes to our progression as spirits. This contact and this relationship is a very serious thing. Nature is not here only to serve us, and this chapter really talks about that. It is here to be loved as well, and we do need this mindset to progress towards God. This chapter is very pretty. Then they go back to Isabel's residence to another meeting, like the one we talked about last week. And then we enter chapter 43, which is called Before the Meeting. He said that they returned to Isabel's residence before 6 p.m. and the room was already filled with busy workers. This meeting has a couple of different things. And instead of said to André Luis that wherever this phrase is very pretty, wherever activity for the good is found, a higher order of spiritual cooperation will be found there. So we're never alone. As Jesus told us, in that meeting, something, as we've seen, as we said as well, something different from the first one would happen. They would receive suffer and needy spirits. Shortly after 6 p.m., the needy began to arrive from a sphere invisible to ordinary human. And then we're going to enter chapter 44 to see what's going to happen in this meeting.
So, 44, chapter 44, assistance, calling to action. Aniceto and Isidoro invite Andrea to start working, giving magnetic passes. A little bit insecure, Andrea remembers Narcissa's teachings. Andrea, as far as possible, never deny help those who suffer. The best medicine is giving hope. Speak then the divine opportunity of the future, encourage, edify, educate in an alchemy without harming those who is still sleeping. Aniceto assigned a group of 6 spirit patients to André. The first was a woman with trachoma, a visual disease. She's complained that she can't see anything. I want to see again. André encouraged her, saying, don't you trust in the power of Jesus? He is still healing the blind, lighting our ways, guiding our steps. Andrea realized that for the first time he changed her state of mind, making her think about the cure and not about the disease. Forgetting about the proper science expression of the phenomenon, all that Andrea saw in front of him was a suffering and need sister. Practicing the fraternal love, a different light began illuminating and warming Andrea's face. Andrea remembered the divine influence of Jesus, and a huge layer of darkness was fading on her face. Andrea said encouraging things to her, try the best sense of the intention, and the concentrated his magnetic helps ability on the disturbed area. In a few seconds, in a few seconds, the woman cried out and started to see again. And Seth realized that Andrea is very emotional because and in order to not let vanity take care of him, remember that they are only instruments of God's love. Everything good comes from him. He is the light of our heart. The woman thanks Andrea a lot, and, and he tells her, my friend, thanks Jesus, not me. I'm just a servant. The next patient was a brother who had died victim of cancer. The entire facial area looked horrible after magnetic passes with encouraging thoughts and words that poor man began to feel better. Send him to the treatment to prepare his mental life. The next, Andrea attended 2 ex-tuberculosis patients, a woman who had a malignant tumor, and then a young man from who had passed away from a shock during surgery. None, none of these last four, however, show any sign of relief. But this chapter is too faster, but it's too nice because the first time Andrea realized can that he can do a great thing. It's nice. Comments? Can I go?
I think it's just
Go.
beautiful that we are
Yeah,
seeing Andrea Luis at the end of the second book being an instrument to give sight to a blind
yeah,
person. And this is a very meaningful thing when it comes to the gospel because we've seen through the gospel Jesus touching and healing blind people a lot. This is very, very, very beautiful.
very beautiful. So, chapter 45, A Sick Mind. This chapter is about the behavior of a spectacle mind and what kind of energy it resonates with. Watching the mediumistic meeting work, Niceto comment. Not only the sick disincarnates come here, the sick incarnates too. The pertains of the number of sick and need is almost the same to the work number. And Seto asked André and Vicente to take a look at the gentleman, Dr. Fidelis, surrounded by small darkness clouds around his head, who was talking with Mr. Bennett, the group instructor. From the conversation, he was obviously a skeptic who said that they attended to mediumistic meetings looking for something that could satisfy him. However, this time, they are dealing with a worldwide deceptions. He was he has read a lot of books about human survival after death, but he has never obtained any proof of it. He puts Spiritism as a seductive thesis. but with many questions. He, he even compares Kardec's work, saying that it has an extraordinary philosophical vision, but that Rich is the metapsychic vision, correct many flights of imagination offer for public check. Calm and security, and his fate, Bennett's interrupted, very patient. Let's remember the master of gospel mission. First, we must build the receptacle, then we will receive the blessing. Dr. Fidelis is smiling ironic in vanity. Watch everything, Aniceto said. How this man display a contaminant mind. He's one of those curious sick incarnates. He has a broad education, but nevertheless, with the feelings have been poisoned. Everything that comes into his mind gets toxic. He's an ordinary researcher, and are many people. He expects everything for others. He examined his fellows but doesn't examine himself. He wants divine realization without making a human effort. Vicente asked Aniceto, what does this mean? What, after all? He doesn't even know the answer. This chapter is so fast, but you got. I think we know lots of Dr. Fidelis around us, you know. Chapter 46, Continue to Learning. Less than an hour for Mr. Bennett to start the work of the mediumistic meeting in the sphere of the incarnates, but in the spiritual sphere, the work increased a lot. In this part, Aniceto gives us impressive data. There was that there were already 35 incarnate people in the place, but in the sphere of these incarnates were more than 200 people, because in addition to the spirits that were already there to attend the meeting, the 35 incarnates who arrived to Mediun's committee brought with them several other spirits accompanying them, and they don't realize this fact. For these spirits that come together with incarnates, a special security scheme was organized by spirits of huge value, separated them from those who were got the street and brought by the spiritual servers of the place for receiving treatment. André tells us what happened simultaneously in the physical and the spiritual parts of mediumistic meeting. While, while the incarnates left requests for medical advice, guidance, assistance, and magnetic passes on the table, 40 spiritual doctors analyzed the requests, and others 40 cooperators came and went collecting and bringing information. And Seto tells Andrea that the research made by workers were that to attend only true needs, such as those who request therapy for health support, and not for those who want advice for daily life, and still refuse to at least give a Christian example. The incarnates and disincarnates who abuse the possibilities of exchange between visible and invisible spheres have paid a high price. At the moment, a work friend approached Aniceto asking if they come from Nosolar, because if possible, he will need their help after the meeting to two urgent cases. So another fast chapter, but lots of reality. You know what happened when you made a mediumistic meeting. Lots of spirits more than incarnates. Chapter 47, hard at work again. This chapter, Andrea shares the mental behavior at the mediumistic meeting work, as the anxious expectation of those incarnates present distribute the vibrational mind field affecting the mediumistic organization of Isabel in the respective position of the comment. Aniceto says to Andrea that many Spiritism research concern about the lack of concentration at the spiritual work. Concentrate means to centralize, to synchronize, put everything in the same direction. If the incarnates run away from their responsibility outside the scope of the spirit service, what could they concentrate on quick moments of spiritual service? Good concentration requires a straight life. Thus, our thoughts can be synchronized with others' high spirit thoughts in order to provide us the ability for a union with the good. Keeping on work presence involving mental meditative activities of high order is essential. We gotta assume our spiritual identity and, and through the mediumistic balance our life by meditating the visible from invisible. At this time, two interesting cases of request for help appear. The first is a lady who wants to send a message to her present daughter, but she wasn't able to communicate at the moment for the good of both. The incarnate daughter, who is very used to always having her mother's help, and for the mother who would feed this unbalanced mental connection, delay her in her spiritual service work. However, she could find her daughter later when she would be out of body while she's sleeping. The second case was the mister asking for help to Amaro, her nephew, who needed help with his physical health. However, Isidoro explained that this time is won't be possible because we have already asked for more than 5 receipts of him, and he hasn't taken even one seriously. He doesn't want really help. So lots of thoughts, teachings, and this book is amazing of how how much we learn with that. Finish.
Okay. Just before Nora keeps on going, this chapter that Chris just read, it brings a teaching very important for us when it comes to acquiring a better state of health, because it does start by our inner life, not just receiving some blessings from the spirits. That's not how it works. And even if we received some magnetic passes or some exterior help, we could fall in disease again if we don't fix our inner and those very profound and that are attached to our spirits bad thoughts and bad wishes that we have been carrying for God knows how much time.
Yes, the good concentration requires a straight life.
This is amazing. I love that. This is very
Yes.
impressive. Very impressive. You can keep on going, dear.
Absolutely beautiful. And, just like João and Chris, we can see a lot of that. Also, those vibrations, like Chris said, when they were doing the mediumistic meetings, and then there were like 200 of these beings. And even us here today, they're entities, beautiful brothers and sisters. We're all children of God listening when we're doing our God at home. Like to be conscious of that in both realms. We can this is what I love about this book is it's very interchangeable, and so even though Andre speaks about it from his angle, we bring it down as well. That's why he's also sharing it. So we have that side, but we also learn things here. So absolutely beautiful. Yes.
Just before you start there, Chico Xavier spent 2 years opening his spiritist center to nobody, just to the spirits. This
Wow.
is very impressive. Yes, two
Yeah,
years
it's
opening,
very impressive.
um, all days of the week, and receiving nobody, only the spirits.
Yeah.
And he did question, right? He questioned Emmanuel. What's the story? I remember with the translation.
You do
Yeah,
remember? Yes, yes.
yeah.
It's beautiful, right? Yeah, to respect
One
also that,
day, Emmanuel let he see what happened for sure.
Yeah, so yeah, so that
It's amazing.
that's good. Yes, for sure, and that's good for us, right? And we also to keep the mind because of the vibrations. And I was going to take time to say hello to Eleni, Marisa, and Edison. Thank you so much. All right, so we got a little little break, and the last 4 chapters, they're kind of like what Chris said. They go really fast, but they have loads of things for us to learn. So now we're going to talk strictly about disincarnating, and I know that it goes hand in hand from the Spirit's book, chapter part 2, chapter 3, the return from the corporeal to the spirit life. So a lot of the stuff that we see um, Andre teaching us today has that just as a reference for us this evening. So chapter 48 is a case study by the names, Cremilda. Cremilda. I'll be like, Cremilda.
Cremilda.
So Cremilda disincarnates, and before we analyze it, she disincarnates, and Andre and the mentors, they find her kind of like in this frozen state, right? So she's completely frozen, and Andre's like, well, what's going on, right? And then right next to Cremilda was the fiance, and so they start talking. Okay, well, it's because she didn't have, that education, that spiritual education to really know what's happening. That he called it a lack of religious preparation. And, here religious, we can substitute for what we believe, right? It's because spiritism is not about religion, but it's more of that spiritual state or that new age finding kind of thing, whatever we want to put. But nevertheless, she didn't have that preparation, so she's kind of like in this deep state. Finally, they say, okay, we need to intervene a little bit different. So then the spiritual doctor comes over, and then she kind of snaps out of it. Oh, doctor, thank you so much. And she's relieved. Thank you for helping me. Oh my gosh, I just thought I was like, I can imagine, I thought I was dead. Oh my god, right? And they're like, my dear, there's no such thing as dead. And she's like, oh my god, right? So they put her back to sleep, right? And so then they talked about her as far as like just a little bit about analyzing her situation, and she was going to receive help later on. So a couple of points to notice was one, her age, that she was around her 20s. And I was thinking, it's an important age in our lives, the 20s and the 30s, the 40s, because so much is happening for us. 20s, where I don't know in Brazil, but here's like typically we go to the university and then people start in relationships. By 30s, you're already with your career, you're having children most time. Well, nowadays, no, I'm single, I don't have children, but I still have my routine, right? So different. And and even in 40s, life happens. And it's like a little kind of like Andre throwing it to us, don't forget, if even though she was in her 30s, and it's important to work on this. And it's such a important age. So no spiritism always like, oh, evangelize the little kids. But we need to remind ourselves those 20s, 30s, and 40s, we gotta continue, right? It's a good age to be in that. And I know Jesus too started his ministry, right? We hear him 33. So it's 30s is a beautiful age. The second thing that we learned from this is that she wasn't a spiritist first, nor did she have any religious or anything. And yet, when she was going, where she's going to be taken is not going to be to an umbrella. It says here, because of her natural goodness, and her a cultivation of virtue, she will not go through purgatorial trials. It's a pity she doesn't have that religious education, but she will adapt to her new life, right? So this is absolutely beautiful for us to not see, we see these eyes here on earth, and we cannot see really the full picture. We don't have those eyes that only God knows, and when we get to that form, but to cultivate the goodness. And there it is. It's such a merciful thing, I know, because I came up, I was raised in a Christian church. I always thought I'm either go to heaven or hell. Oh my God. And I was never good enough. It was so hard. I was literally a 12-year-old, like my young teens. I just felt so utterly healthy because how am I supposed to be perfect and go to heaven? I thought that's it. I'm gonna be over there partying with the devil. I'm like, you know what? I give up. I came up to that point. It wasn't until like later, when I was 19, that I came across all this, and it just changes everything. So that's hopeful. Any comments? Sure.
I think it's very nice that this chapter brings us the clear idea that being a Christian has nothing at all to do with religion partidarism.
Yeah, it's the hardest. Always Chris says, right, Chris? But we're doing the triangle now.
Yeah. But nice one.
We're good?
Go ahead.
Okay. All right. So the next one's called the Divine Machine. Oh, this chapter, I like stopped. Like it was full of details, because I think Andre here is combining that those spiritual eyes, because he does get X-ray vision to see a body disincarnate, but it's also that part of science. So he's like coming in and out, and I think the way he ends it, it's absolutely beautiful. So now this is a case study of a man who is disincarnating gradually. So there's family around him, whatever, and then um the mentors come and say, okay, and Seattle, right? He comes to, the trio, as John says, right? He's gonna come here, you're gonna see something. All of a sudden, he can see through this body, and he goes into details like page 316, I think the whole thing, but 316, 317, just what he sees, and so many things, right? He says the mortal eye would never be able to see what you're about to see, Andre. So then Andre talks about so many things, the different parts of the body. He says, but it was interesting, as the man was disincarnating, he sees these little, he calls them like little bacteria, like little things. I said, I witnessed the passing of strange little forms, tiny containers, I meant to say, with deadly bacteria and larger particles of microbial flora were being transformed into tiny boats, accommodating minuscule beasts of prey by hundreds. In other words, as the mass disincarnating, parts of the body are dying, the cells, these little things are mentioned away, right? We can probably just have a whole discussion of what is life. Like, I mean, we can't even fathom that even that itself, that little form, whatever it was, is a child of God and doing its mission. I can imagine just being like, oh, seeing that. Wow. Well, I still get goosebumps just thinking about that. And then they're talking about this, and they put a question about, well, this is the divine body formed by a pre existing spirit mold. So, this spirit mold is all of these components that this spirit is made of, right? But that's different than our souls. That they themselves, is the biochemistry of our bodies, have their own mechanism. Okay, and so I was thinking, like, I don't know if you guys have ever read the book Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. Oh my God, it's funny. But they say that she was inspired by this movement hundreds of years ago. It's called galvanism or something like that, where this guy would shock the body with electricity, and they were trying to come, do all of this, and then Frankenstein is really about, can we combine different parts and stuff like that, right? And I feel like Dre was having that moment, like as a doctor, like we can't do Frankenstein, like it is what it is, because he goes in part, and he even says there's a great similarity between the human body and the modern machine. They both run on fuel, right? But with the difference that humans have chemical combustions that obey spiritual senses and directs organic life, right? And then it says, and the mind governs. And we can go here a whole lesson on what he says. The mind possesses the character, reason, memory, direction, balance, understanding, and also controls our corporal expression. So even now, as we're doing this, we don't think about it. It's not the arm moving. There's actually neurons in here that are going in like nanoseconds, and our brain is doing everything. There's a series on PBS that, and I haven't finished, guys, but it's so powerful. It's just talking about the brain and the consciousness. It is absolutely mind changing. But okay, we have to go back and think about this book that was written before the neuroscience now. And if you are someone who studies the science, it's impressive, impressive. And it says each cell is a tiny engine running on mental impulse. And it really is everything, everything, everything. So as the dying man is doing all of this, he's inviting us to remember about self-discipline, because inside of us we have an entire world, and every biochemical process is incredible. I don't even think we could have that kind of X-ray vision. And I quote this to a friend because I've taken biochemistry, and we had to do these charts, and I'm like, oh my gosh, and then this is happening, and this is, and you're just going like, can you imagine seeing this at once? I told someone, and they have a chart. You just see like expressways everywhere. I couldn't even imagine Andre seeing all of that. But to remind us, we need to take care of these cells because they are also alive. And so that's why, as this man was disincarnating gradually, he was having a little bit of difficulties because those cells were resisting. They were not educated at different levels for him to do that. Anyway, I don't know if anybody wants to make a comment. Comments?
Beautiful, beautiful perspective.
Okay, so no
Beautiful.
Frankenstein. Okay. Chapter 50, Fernando's disincarnation. So now we have a different case study. And again, he still has this X-ray vision, so he's able to see things from very different eyes. And this is now another person who is in a hospital too, and he's pretty much at the end. And he describes the same thing, that his cells and his body, everything was having such a hard time, but it was the family. So there's lots of family around, and he describes that they were emanating, or they were sending off these gray vibes, and these gray vibes were making it so difficult because they really wanted to help Fernando, right? Yeah, Fernando, right? And so they're like, I can imagine, okay, we could come up with a plan. But you see, the funny thing is they don't tell Andre's just kind of watching, because I didn't see this coming. The very first time I read this, I was like, oh my gosh, you guys are good. Wait to see what happens. So they go to Fernando and they like zap him with life. And so Fernando comes back to life, and they're in the hospital, and the family's like, oh my God, right? And they're like, okay, guys, go home, take a break. You've been here a long time, right? And now talking in 3D. And so they say that the family goes home, and so the doctor stays behind, I'm sure nurse, whatever. And then they open the window, and all these entities are like, is Fernando coming? They're waiting, right? And they explain to Andre that the reason they're there is because, again, the discipline that's what he created for himself. Those were the type of friendships that he had. So he's kind of still bringing in this, right? And then all of a sudden, by the way, the man disincarnates. Boom. So then the family comes back. So what the spirits did was like, oh my God, they got rid of the family so that the energies could go away. And then they disincarnated and were able to help him release him. And then the family did what they had to do. I find this a little bit, it's out of, of course, we have respect for this because we're talking about a human life, but it was rather like a shocker because I would be like, yes, we can see something.
This chapter, and I think that we have to bring this in the book, Thought and Life. I know that you guys have studied it on Kardec Radio. Emmanuel literally tells us that thought has power. Point. Chico Xavier and told us, uh, we have this relates in a couple of books, and his close friends they they brings these teachings for us as well. He told us that while he was getting ready to bed at night, he could see loads of prayers from all the states of Brazil coming and embracing him. He could see the lights, and he knew they were prayers. And Emmanuel told him that he would die in a day that Brazil, the entire country, was happy. And he couldn't quite get why was that, but we have relates that Chico told his friends that he wasn't still dead because all those prayers, they kept him in his body, like forcing him to stay. And then we know, and Chris know that. I don't know if you know that as well, dear. That Chico passed away in 2002. And in this year, the day that Chico passed away, Brazil won the world, that football World Cup.
Mhm.
Um, yes, and the entire country was actually happy. And because of this happiness, they weren't praying a lot. And then Chico's spirit could fly away. It's very pretty, and this is this really relates to this chapter because when we don't accept that somebody's about to die, we may hold that person here, even if that person does not deserve that suffering anymore, even if the time has come, our thoughts, they have power to do so. So when we are living that kind of thing, we do need to reflect more about what we want for those that we love, and if we want to hold them in that much of suffer. This chapter is beautiful.
It really is. Yeah. Anyone else? All right. So we'll go to
Go.
the last chapter. Oh, thank you. And the last chapter is just a farewell. It's a friendly farewell. So they're saying goodbye, blah, 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 It's nice. It was a great mission. They're all gonna go to their places, right? And one of the things to remember, it's like their language. They kept it very positive. I feel like they were not in this, they were not going back, they were not like thinking about the cases and talking about them or judging them, or they were so efficient, and smart about their time, knowing it was like they were about to go somewhere else. And so instead of wasting time, I'm gonna say it like that, talking about, and even Andre could have asked questions. It was about the present there, the positive vibrations, and them just enjoying talking about Jesus, right? Reminding themselves Jesus experienced duty and sacrifice to the world, so they're like boosting each other up, giving each other motivation to continue working, continue doing the good. And then it ends with a beautiful prayer. I don't know if we have to. Should we read it, or because I'm pretty much done, like with the chapter? Do you guys want me to read the prayer, the last words? Would it be okay?
I don't remember how long it is. Is it too long?
It's this and all the way to here, like 10 lines.
For me, it's fine. You can read it for
There's
us to
two.
finish.
Thank you. Which we're gonna finish because this is how they finish up. Not the whole thing, but the last 10 lines. It says, "Master, teach us to act without the fetters of the passions so that we may recognize your holy purposes. Beloved Lord, help us to be your loyal servants. Beloved Master, grant us your instruction. Righteous Judge, lead us on straight paths. Sublime Physician, restore our health. Compassionate Pastor, lead us to the fount of living. Wise Engineer, give us your blueprint. Magnanimous Administrator, inspire us in our tasks. Sower of good, teach us to cultivate the fields of our souls. Divine Carpenter, help us to build our eternal home. Careful Potter, patch the vessel of our heart. Watchful friend, be also tolerant of our weakness, and Prince of Peace, have compassion on our fragile spirits. open our eyes and show us the highway to your kingdom. And that's pretty much how this book ends. A beautiful thought,
Wow.
just beautiful prayer. And there it
Yes,
is.
beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Thank you guys so much. We've reached the end of book number 2.
Whew.
Um, yes, next week we're gonna be back here again, starting another great book, which is called Missionaries of Light. And this book's as well an amazing, amazing lesson for us. We're gonna see Andrea Louise with another spiritual mentor in the spiritual plan. Another very noble spirits leading the way and bringing us new teachings. I'm very, very grateful that we've finished this one as well. Do you guys wanna say something?
I think I will remember Otavio's case for the rest of my life, you know.
Yes,
Yeah.
it was very strong. Yes, a very, very strong lesson.
Yeah.
So thank you guys
But
so
I
much.
want to thanks a lot.
I just wanted to
Thank
say
you.
thank you. Thank you, Juliana, Felipe. Thank you
Yes,
for Uruguay. She's still watching. Yes. So
yes.
thank you.
Yes.
Thank you guys so much. We're gonna reach our hour here. Actually, have passed a little bit. We're very grateful for everybody that stayed this far with us. Very, 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 very grateful. And
Thank
we
you.
wish everybody a blessed rest of night. And we're gonna be back here next week, starting a new book, a very special book. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.